but the World Federation of Rose Societies, through the Peugeot Foundation in Europe, Peugeot gave the World Federation an opportunity to give a grant of 7,500 pounds sterling for a worldwide rose conservation project that they thought was extremely worthy. And it looks like we're going to get that grant and be awarded that. So our little Rambler project over at the American Rose Society is going to be funded in part by the Peugeot Foundation through the World Federation as the most significant rose conservation program going in the world right now.
That's amazing. Wow, that's
very.
That's great news. Yeah, that is definitely good news.
Well, it does. Even though we were joking about the Peggy Martin rose, it doesn't. It gets the word out there that there are Rambler roses, and so that's always a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, and then I think the first thing, and it's going to be hard to educate people, is that you do not prune these once blooming roses in February.
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to be doing a lot of educational work on that. That's absolutely wrong.
Yeah, that's. And as far as
the best time to prune the Ramblers is in the winter. I do all the pruning in the winter, the major pruning in the winter.
Yeah.
Because you can see what you're doing. If you wait till they leaf out, you can't see what you're doing. You can't get in there and really prune them. So I'll start my major pruning in January, right after the first of the year.
Yeah.
On the Ramblers over at the ARC.
Yeah.
And you'll never miss the bloom. I mean, you would have more bloom if you let it grow into a huge monster, uncontrolled beast that's going to take a huge amount of time. But I can't do that. I was at Chambersville. I was taking care of 350 of these things on 12-foot towers. I had a crew of 2 guys that I got 2 days a week. And it was the 3 of us that maintained 350 of those things. And we did it and kept them looking great. So they don't have to take a huge, and that's the main thing in our Rambler program. The new committee I formed is we're going to start an educational effort on really how to grow these things where they don't turn into nightmares to manage. And Matt, what bottom line is, what we're going to do is when you get your roses on the market to sell them, we want to try to have conditioned the market to get rid of the bad thoughts that people have about Ramblers and to show them the many ways that they can be grown with a more modest amount of effort and pruning and everything. And
we see quite a bit of we see quite a bit of demand for Rambler roses in particular, and so I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be a nice initiative, and I think a lot of them.
Well, I sent you some great roses. Wait, I'll send you some photos of them, and you wait till you see some of those things. There's probably a lot that you're not familiar with, but you're going to be amazed.
Yeah, I just started with one that I'd heard of.
It was always so much fun in the spring when those things would start blooming. I'd run around. The first time I saw one bloom, it was like Christmas or something. And all these little surprise packages opening up.
That's always a good way to do it. Yeah, I always say it's like some people love the weekend, some people love Christmas. It depends where sometimes you need a little bit often. Yeah. Sometimes you just need that big blowout.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's cool.
All right, we've got a fairly good group, and maybe I was texting a few people earlier, so some of them might be able to join us as we continue. I'll go ahead and we'll just do a few announcements. And whoop, not the one I want. There's what we go. We're gonna share my screen here just to say, welcome. It's good to see y'all. Now it's getting dark when these meetings start. It's that time of year, but it's good to see y'all. We were talking about, Claude was discussing how October's supposed to be one of our wettest months, and we were unfortunately chuckling about that because it has not been a month for rain. So we're saying in 10 days there's a chance of rain. I had a 35% chance listed on my on my phone app saying 35% chance. I'm holding out that we'll be getting some rain. We'll do just a few announcements. Welcome to Matt Douglas tonight from High Country Roses to speak to us, and we're so glad that you could join us online. Thanks to Maureen for helping us set that up, and to Andy for helping with set up the Zoom meeting. Coming up in November, the first weekend in November, traditionally, is the Festival of Roses, the Antique Rose Emporium. I think Paul Zimmerman is a featured speaker at that event. I plan on going. I think Claude's going to go. Is there anyone else going to that event? Or
we're talking about it. Nothing firm yet.
Yeah, they'll have a dinner on Friday, and then events on Saturday and Sunday.
We're going also.
Excellent.
Okay. Cool.
So represent. In November on the 12th, Pam and Tony, or Pam volunteered to host it. It's early this year because I know some people start traveling closer to Thanksgiving time. So I guess it's the second Tuesday in November. So it's early, but we'd love to have you. We'll do a plant and rose exchange. We were just discussing that, if we can put out there that if any of us have cuttings that any of us are interested in trying to propagate, then perhaps we can bring even cuttings to this meeting, even if you don't have your roses already rooted. And we'll start back up, and those are just the dates for 2025, for January, February, March, and April, then a May picnic. So, Matt, I went to y'all's website and borrowed some pictures, and I've been posting a few on our Facebook page to show people some of the varieties that you have. And we're excited that you could join us. And I'll go ahead and share the screen with you.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Let's see.
I'll hit mute.
You might have to walk me through this. I'm good with roses technology. We hire that a little bit. So I just hit share screen, and then I can click on the old. I see. Great. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
I always like it when I get it going here. Oh, and I can see you still. That's always nice too. So thank you guys so much for having me. I have been both physically and online trying hard to get out and talk to some folks in different parts of the country this year. And so I've been able to talk to the folks in Indianapolis, and I was just down at the Central Convention in Wichita. So this is just right what I've been looking to do, and I'm excited to get to talk to you guys and just share a little bit about our nursery. Because as much as I feel like everybody knows about it, not everybody knows about it. So I definitely want to just kind of introduce you to High Country Roses. I will say I have finally been to Dallas. So it took me a long time to get to Dallas. I was as a child of the 70s. Most of my knowledge was like the Dallas Cowboys winning the 1977 Super Bowl, which wasn't so good for us, and Dallas, getting to watch glimpses of it on the TV. But it was much nicer in person. I had some delightful food there. but I definitely enjoy it. So like you mentioned, my name is Matt Douglas, and I am technically I'm the current owner of High Country Roses, but really the title is really more of like caretaker. I think this business has been around since 1970, and I'm the third generation of our family to kind of take it on. So I always struggle a little bit with what exactly that says about my role with it. At this point, my card says head rosarian, and I think that's as close to accurate as I can be. So to start with, this picture that's up, can anybody tell me what that rose is? Does anybody have any idea? Well, it's named after my mother. It's the Linda Campbell rose, and so it, you can imagine, has played a fairly important role in my life, and obviously as part of the rosarium. So let me just give you a quick overview of who who we are. So we are a web-based, sorry, hang on one second. There we go. I'm back. All right, yeah, so we are a website-based mail order nursery, and we've been that way since about the 1980s. Like I mentioned, the business started in the 1970s. We've been primarily focused on mail orders since the 1980s. We're located just outside of Denver, Colorado, in a town called Broomfield, which is, if you're familiar at all with the area, it's about 3/4 of the way from Denver to Boulder. So we're about 20 miles northwest. We are operating in about 60,000 square feet under 5 separate greenhouses there. You can see that picture in the center. That shows 4 of our grow houses, and then you can just see in the back there is sort of our operations and propagation house. The photo on the right shows our stock plant. So we maintain a collection of about 2,000 stock plants that we do our cuttings from. And then the photo on the left will show you just kind of our production houses there, and plants that we're growing for sale. So each year we grow about 40,000 plants for sale. We'll ship about 35 of those, hold about 5,000 of them over each year. And we're shipping to all around the country. We're in all 50 states. We've sent roses to Guam, which I always think is interesting, and off to Canada. So we've been able to kind of help the Canadian market a little bit as things have gotten a little bit tight up there with some of the nurseries going out of business. What makes High Country Roses different is, like I've mentioned already, so we've been around since 1970. So we've worked a lot of the kinks out, to say the least. So a lot of our processes date back all the way to Dr. Campbell, who founded the business. We're currently growing over 800 unique varieties of roses, and that spans all categories of roses. So we do tons and tons of old garden roses, climbers, modern roses, species roses, and modern roses. And as you may suspect, as a mail order nursery, while we may have a focus on some of those older plants, a lot of the newer varieties, a lot of the modern roses really drive a lot of our sales. So to give you an idea of kind of where we are the second largest own root producer of weeks roses in the United States, which I was shocked to find out, but I think it's a good testament to sort of our practices and longevity of the nursery, and just it's what we're working on. Our roses are all grown in quart-sized container. We choose that size specifically for shipping plants. You can see that in the top left-hand corner there. That's a picture of a plant I grabbed right out of production today. You can see that pot's about a 5-inch pot. Plants are generally about a foot tall when we ship them. And that is a great size plant. It's a very active growing time and the overall lifespan of that plant. We have great success in sending those roses out across the country. And, you know, we do guarantee all of the roses for a full year. So, and I'm proud of that guarantee. We've had it for a long time. I always said the key to this business is to have happy people growing roses. So if there's anything that blocks that or stops that, I want to take care of it. And so, you know, we'll replace roses that die. We'll replace roses that don't thrive. Certainly anything that, you know, we need to take care of to get the customer to the point that they're successfully growing. That's what we want to do. So, and then one of the other unique things that we do that's just a little bit different is I grew incredibly fatigued of trying to guess when to send roses to people. We used to have a, you know, this zone gets them on this date and that sort of setup, but we allow you to choose when you want your roses shipped. So each year we load our inventory into the website on January 10th. And that's for shipments starting in March 1st of the spring. We will ship from that point until 5 days before Christmas to December 20th every year. And so, you know, if you want your roses early, you know, we'll work with you to get them. But we let you choose when you want things delivered. So our business, like I mentioned, was started in 1970 by my stepfather, Dr. William Campbell. So that's a picture of him there on the lower right. He was a pediatric urologist here in Denver and just a scientist from top to bottom. He spent about a decade collecting and testing roses in Denver that he could grow, because frankly, he started off killing a lot of roses. He wanted a rose garden just like his grandmother had, and quickly learned that Colorado was a little tricky for some of the more testy or tender hybrid teas and things. So as the scientist and ever intellectually curious guy that he was, he just jumped in with both feet, discovered a lot of old garden roses, a lot of species roses, and definitely learned a lot, especially as the Canadian breeding programs got started and really flourishing. And that really became a focus. We really began in the 70s and early 80s as kind of a plant trading business, where Dr. Campbell literally would, you know, trade plants with his friends around the country, in just building this collection up and having roses that really thrived in the Rocky Mountain region. I say it was always interesting because you can see the original office building there on the left. So the top floor of that building was a pediatrics building. The basement, though, was the urology practice, or I'm sorry, the top was the urology practice, the bottom was the nursery. And so I would always walk in the back door and you never knew where you were going to work, upstairs or downstairs. And needless to say, it was a little different depending on what floor you were on. So, so about the same time that Dr. Campbell began the nursery with plant trading and local nurseries, I always say I was brought into the rose world. So I was born in 1973, which was a really interesting and great time to start off life. And I was fortunate that my parents were really, really interested in gardening, and in particular roses. And not unlike Dr. Campbell, my mother followed in the footsteps of her grandmother, and she just learned to love roses that way. Became very active in the local rose societies here, Denver Rose Society, and back in the day it was the Arapahoe County Rose Society. And we grew up working the garden and showing roses and enjoying just really learning to love the rose for what it is. And so here you'll see a few pictures. I always say I find this headline so funny that it says Linda Brown's Society sets rose show at the bank. I'm not sure what everybody else was doing in the society, but apparently the news thought it was my mom's. The top left-hand corner there is my just way too adorable little brother showing off one of his arrangements that he displayed. And then you'll see me there on the bottom left winning all the prizes. So we rub that in on my brother. So, but our family was well known in rose circles, and this is out of the local newspaper. I worry about titles. The Rocky Mountain News placed me as a rose fancier early in my life. My mom obviously was very active as president of several societies, district director, and then I can never remember whether she was running for vice president of the American Rose Society or whether or what, but she was also involved nationally. But we took time to smell the roses. So unfortunately, my mother and father ended their marriage, and through the Rose Society, my mother met Dr. Campbell, and they fell in love and got married in the mid 1980s. And as I always like to say, as we do in this business, I was subsequently conscripted. So in other words, it was expected. I got tossed in the back of the truck and drove all over the place, and found myself carrying 3-gallon pots around, and it was a wonderful way to work my way through high school as a kid. So here you'll see pictures of their wedding. On the right here, you'll notice, so these are my stepsisters, and so Melinda, who's standing next to my mom there, she ran the nursery. My sister on the left, Heather, ended up running the nursery in the 90s and 2000s. And then Sharon on the right here, she's done the books for as long as anybody can remember. So it's truly a family affair. And like I mentioned, big piece there was my, so unfortunately in 1992, my mother passed away from a short battle with brain cancer and actually passed away. And understandably, Dr. Campbell lost a little of the vigor for the business. And frankly, the business was just stock plants for about 5 years where nothing was going out. And Dr. Campbell was prepared to just kind of shut it down and that be that. Fortunately, my sister and her husband, Heather and her husband, Day, were already operating in Utah, a nursery called Split Mountain Farms. And so Heather got the bright idea that they would just take one of their greenhouses, they would just downsize and streamline the rose business part of it. So it was manageable and could integrate into their other nursery. And so really at that point, she saved the business. They took, I believe it was 200 stock plants was all with them to Utah, and began propagating and offering those roses by traditional mail order catalog means. And then along came this wonderful thing called the internet, and then all of a sudden things changed in a major way. And she went from several hundred roses being shipped out each year to several thousand roses being shipped out each year, and the shift to the internet and e-commerce drastically changed his business. And since the time when she first started getting it on the internet, we've grown probably about 20 times the size that we were back then. And so Heather, my sister, was or is older than I am, and so about 20 years. And so about 2010, she started poking me in the shoulder and saying, you know, you really ought to think about doing this rose thing. And so eventually, after her persistent asking, I gave up a career that I was tired of in the building industry, and I got into the rose business. So we returned in 2011, and we started off actually renting a greenhouse here in Arvada, and subsequently we've moved into a bigger location, and man, we need some more space now too. So you can see the time goes by. Those are my 3 children there on the top left when we started. That's my 3 children there on the right as they were this summer. And I like to always point out that we still have a solid policy of conscripting teenage family members into the business. So my son has worked summers, and he's worked a ton in the nursery. My daughter Grace on the right has done quite a bit and is currently studying in Costa Rica. And the one in the middle, she loves soccer. So far, nothing. But I just wanted to put this up here just so you can have our contact information. But let me stop sharing here and come back, and just want to share with you guys a little bit about some of our efforts in terms of conservation, because I know that's sort of near and dear to your hearts. So Old Garden Roses is the lifeblood of this business. It has been. It's sort of the foundation that Dr. Campbell really saw, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. So an important part, and especially what I do on a regular basis, is preservation, collection, and maintenance of our stock. So in other words, I'm kind of constantly out there looking for old garden roses, for species roses, for roses that are waning in commerce, for lack of a better term. Some of the things that that we work with the folks at the Fairmont Heritage Foundation here in Denver. Excuse me. And that is a historic cemetery here in town where they have cataloged over 200 different varieties of roses, a lot of them old garden roses. So we preserve a lot of those found roses in the cemetery for their sale and preservation and outreach that they do each year from the cemetery. There's also just a lot of old, interesting roses that have been growing with minimal care in that cemetery. Some of them you just see it and you just can't even believe. Like there's an Alba semiplana rose that literally is 40 feet wide and 10 to 12 feet tall. I mean, it's eaten 5 gravestones. But that's the kind of thing that we want to make sure gets taken care of and taken care of correctly, right? We don't want their landscape folks coming in and mowing over stuff or cutting stuff back to the ground just because they think that's how you take care of roses. So we're very active in the preservation of those plants there. Like I mentioned, I've got a box of roses coming from Claude here tomorrow. I'm excited. We are joined him in the American Rose Society in the Save the Ramblers initiative. And I believe Claude sent me 12 new varieties. So that's great. We will, at this point, our sort of timeline on those 12 varieties and potentially more would be to kind of get them started and then hopefully available potentially next fall, I would say. But this is an important initiative because in particular, ramblers are just kind of, I don't want to say they're forgotten because they are an important category of rose. It's just one that's, people tend to move more towards the climbing roses or towards the shrub roses. And it's a category that is not nearly as daunting as people want to think. So, so we're excited to be partnering with the Ramblers initiative. One of the other ways that we have been very active in collecting old garden roses and hard to find roses is through Rose Society members. Honestly, I've found Rose Society members to care, to know what their roses are, and to grow healthy plants. And so we've partnered with quite a few Rose Society members to keep plants in commerce. One of the ladies here is a woman named Gail Felzine in Sterling, Colorado, which is on the high plains here. And so I go out and see her every year. She farms 800 acres, but she has 8 acres right around her house, which is nothing but a literal Garden of Eden of roses. It is just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Roses of every shape and size and age, and honestly, a few of the rambling roses we've gotten from her as well. So just a great source of old garden roses. We've worked with other society members. I've got a woman named Carol Macon down in Colorado Springs, who every spring calls me up and reminds me she's not getting any younger, and wants me to come down and take some cuttings off of her roses. So, and then this last piece, I'm sorry to say it's going to be a little bit vague, but it's exciting and I want to share it with you anyway. So we have entered into a partnership which is not public yet, but we're working on it, which will enable us to bring an incredible number, potentially double the number of old garden roses that we have on offer and available to the public. I am currently waiting on about 20 plants. We hope to add about 20 old garden roses every year for about the next 5 to 7 years, if things go well. And that is just extremely exciting. It's I will just say it's a reliable source and a great name that you'll all recognize, but not quite public yet. So that's exciting from the standpoint that we're able to really get a lot of roses that are out of commerce back in commerce. And then one thing that I'm interested and excited about is I haven't decided what to call it yet, but we've collected a bunch of smaller hybridizers. So I don't know whether to call them small growers or what, but we've been working with a number of smaller growers, hybridizers that have put out some really fantastic roses. And we're developing a program that enables them to get their roses into commerce when some of the big growers honestly kind of look twice at them. You know, there may be 5 roses introduced every year. That doesn't mean there's just 5 good roses that need to be in your yard. So this is kind of enabling us to kind of reach out to some of these growers. We've got a new rose, if you're familiar, in American Rose Society circles. Suni Bolar from New Jersey is going to introduce one of her roses named after Rosarian Tom Mayhew next year. We've worked with Robert Ripito a little bit, who's done roses. He's out of Palm Springs, probably best known for the Rose Miracle on the Hudson. But like he says, he's got, 100 roses that he'd like somebody to look at, and, we're able to introduce a lot of those things for him. And then the one I'm really excited about is we're working with, if you know Dwayne, and I always butcher his last name, I have to apologize. And I know he's not on the call. Dwayne Steinmantle, I think it is. You would know him from sort of Instagram and Rose online circles as Dwayne's Roses. He is a really active hybridizer in Washington State in a tough climate, and he has really got some great hardy roses that we're going to be able to introduce here starting next year. So those are some of the things we're working on, and along with that, I suppose I should tell you, our collection of old garden roses is right around, I believe, 200 varieties at the current moment, maybe a little bit more. And then certainly probably another 15 to 20 species roses. So it's an important part of our business. So I'd love to just answer any questions you guys have about literally anything. So if you have any questions, let me know.
So if anyone has any questions, you can unmute and let Matt know what your questions are.
Well, I'd just like to comment that I really enjoyed your program, Matt, because I knew Bill and Linda pretty well. We leased our house out and moved to Durango in 1984.
Okay.
And that's where I had been growing roses in Texas, and it was pretty easy to grow roses in Texas. We lived at 7,500 feet, and I found out it wasn't going to be quite so easy in Mancus shale soil. So my wife saw a little thing about the Durango Rose Society was meeting on a Sunday afternoon, and we went and visited, and that's where I first joined the Rose Society. Not long after, we were participating in rose shows, and Bill and Linda, but mostly Linda, would come down and judge the show for us every year. And got to know both of them a little, not real well, but on more than one or two occasions. And then just about the time that Linda died was the same time we moved back to Dallas, and I kind of lost track. And then I saw Bill's Roses pop up in Utah, and I was trying to figure all this out. So you filled in all these gaps for me.
There we go.
I really enjoyed it.
So Claude, even better, my son is currently living in Durango and going to school down there. So yeah,
Fort Lewis.
Great corner of the state.
Yeah. Well, they called us the banana belt down there because it was so much warmer. Because we were of course, we were on the west slope and not on the east slope. My dad used to, every time he'd see in the paper or on TV that they were having a big snowstorm in Denver, Colorado Springs, or whatever, he'd always call me up and start ragging on me about the cold weather and everything. And I'd say, hey, it's beautiful over here, because the Rocky Mountains are just a big wall that just separated those cold fronts that slid down the Front Range. from us, and they very seldom spilled over onto the backside. So we really enjoyed it up there. It was great. So, but I really enjoyed your program because I had these gaps in how all this happened and filled in the blanks for me.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Matt. We appreciate you coming. I also enjoyed the program. I was born and raised in Westminster, so I've spent a lot of time in Broomfield, although I wasn't not familiar. I hadn't been familiar with high country roses because back then I wasn't growing roses yet. So, but I still come home. Denver's home. So next time I come home, I'll have to come and see the nursery. Yes.
Well, we're basically in Westminster, so we're on the farthest edge you can be.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely come by, and anybody who's in town should just give me a call. This time of year, obviously hours are kind of up and down and here and there a little bit, so we do kind of say give a call, but you're definitely welcome to come and visit and look through the nursery. I had somebody in from Oklahoma just today.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're always excited to learn of a new source for old garden roses. So I'm sure you'll hear from many of us. Yeah.
Definitely.
Any more questions or comments?
I guess I have a question on a production level. Have you ever run into any significant problems with rose mosaic in what you've received and had to just discontinue propagating it?
Yeah, anything that shows signs of virus is quarantined and out of the greenhouse basically instantaneously. So a lot of our cut stock comes in from clean source. The rest that we're maintaining in-house is monitored on a regular basis. So like when we are bringing in outside material, we do ask for a report from the grower. So like in this case, it's some trusted sources that we know what's going on with their plants, and certainly any visual any visual representation ends up with it getting taken out of the greenhouse immediately. Beyond that, sanitation is just it's a huge thing in growing successfully and in propagating successfully. So all of the cuttings we stick are treated prior to them being rooted, and so we take I go that way mostly for gall and things like that can be culturally controlled. Obviously, like mosaic or something like that, it just has to be cold when it's seen. And fortunately, for whatever reason here in Colorado, in particular with rosette, we have rosette here, but we have very, very low instance of it compared to other parts of the country. And I think a lot of it has to do with just kind of the cold winters, knocking out a good portion of the mite population that spreads it. That's my theory that I'm going with at this point. But yeah, fortunately, we don't see a lot of it.
That's good. Like I was involved in the battling rosette thing. I think it's basically because you don't have enough roses in the environment to sustain a mite population.
Yeah, that's true too. I mean, obviously, what we see back east so much is with multiflora going just crazy everywhere. You're right. There's just not a natural population of roses here outside of Rosa woodsii or Arkansana and a little bit of and honestly, those varieties just don't generally show much problem with rosette to begin with, and generally they're so small, it's just not much of an issue.
And then can I make one last comment?
Sure.
Yeah, I found out about you because it was a year and a half, a couple of years ago. Pam asked me to look